welcome to your crowd. These are your people.
Welcome.
Okay, that's enough of that.
Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us at For the Love of Horror and for being one of our biggest collective guest panels. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
One of the things that struck me in re-watching the movie after quite a few years for this event is how grim it is. This is A Nightmare on Elm Street before the franchise lurched too far into comedy. There's a great deal of nastiness in this movie. It's a proper horror movie.
Yes, sure is.
And I wanted to throw that out to all of you and to kind of get your reaction, if you agree, if it's an accurate comment that I'm making, that this is horror with some humor, but it's generally horror. What do you think?
How I feel about it? Being part of events like this and talking, examining the film and everything, a lot of the horror to me is it comes across realizing that it's a lot of psychological horror in this film, and I think that kind of resonates strong in a fearful way that's different than just slasher, and there's blood and stuff. But yeah, that always strikes me talking about it.
Yeah, you said the word fearful. Ken, would you agree?
Fucking A, can you hear me? Well, what I have to say about it, I think that part 3, The Dream Warriors, had a touch of old school drama and new school drama in it. But what I loved about it the most is that it made history with me as an African-American black man. I'm the first black to survive a major horror film and return to a sequel. I answer your question, I think it had a touch of the old, a touch of the new, and it had a story. It wasn't just a slasher, they had a story to it, It covered, drugs, it covered mental health, it covered everything, so you had to watch a story. And at the end of the day, you had some damn good actors in it.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Bradley, Gregg. I think, thank you all for coming out. It's my first time in the UK. Yeah? It won't be my last. So I think that Ken and I are kind of uniquely positioned in the canon of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which both of us were in, kind of really straddled the line. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was the last script that Wes Craven was involved with until the final Nightmare. And there was a certain gravitas in part 3. There was, like you said, I like it, grim, and there was someone that everyone could relate to in that film. There was, everybody in this room could relate to one of these characters on a real visceral level. And nothing against part 4, but Dream Warriors for life! But Patricia Arquette added so much to part 3. And she's gone on to win Academy Awards, and we all miss her when she was with us. And part 4 just felt like it was coasting on the comedy, on the MTV generation, and it felt a lot lighter and a lot fluffier, and that's why I think, and I could say pretty objectively, because I can look at Nightmare on Elm Street 3 now, and I'm a completely different person than I was And Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is definitely the best Nightmare on Elm Street in the franchise.
I agree. First of all, thank you guys for coming out. It's the best, right? For the love of horror. I mean, you got a lot of great people here. David Arquette. David Arquette over there. So, this is a unique film. I think you could take this film out of the franchise and it would be fine on its own. It's an amazing picture to be a part of. How we all group together as one to fight the demon. It's crazy. It's pretty interesting also the fact that we're here 35 years later, still talking about this movie. So rock on.
As far as Taron goes, I think we really wanted my head to explode when Freddie put the needles to my arm, and the effect didn't work. And I think that it helped make Taron a better character when it really didn't go too far, you know. So, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
re-watching the film, as I did last week, and I hadn't seen the movie for quite some number of years, I want to talk about the death scenes. So if there's anybody that's never seen the film, tough, because we're going to spoil it for you. The puppet death is the first that we see. Go on, can we have some cheers for the puppet death? Again, it comes back to that idea of it being kind of real horror. It's grim, and it's nasty, and there is no happy ending. And I wondered whether you'd take us through. Can you hear me all right? Whether you could take us through the creation of that scene and how you delivered it as an actor.
Well, I think that, you know, I've shared with some of you that it was very raw, for lack of a better word, lower budget, practical with the effects. And I think that adds to some of the, again, psychological fear from it, you know, just like the simplicity of a blood drop on the floor, and then when the foot steps into frame and you see the veins, and the way those makeup artists created those makeup effects were just very realistic looking, you know. And we had to choreograph, there was just an IV stand in this abandoned hospital that they redid one floor of this abandoned hospital to make it look, you know, like where we were staying. And they tied off the veins to this IV stand, and one of the camera assistants was pulling it backwards with the camera, and we had to make sure that it was taut and stayed in time, and it was kind of like a dance. It was like choreographing a dance, and to hear how that affected people 35 years later, it still affects people. I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, it was a process of really working to make that look real.
And there's two sides to it as well, because there's the side that we see of you almost pretending to walk, and then there's the version that you're going through where your skin is being torn and your body's being mutilated. So there's two versions of the same death on screen, which could be very clumsy, but isn't clumsy at all. And as you say, 35 years later, or wherever we are, it still packs an impact, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's very cool to hear, because, like I've shared, that when you are a young actor coming up, you're thrilled to just be honored to be chosen and to get work, you know. And I'd never really worked in the horror genre before, and when I go into it, I give it my all, what I do, and I didn't set out to go, oh, okay, I'm gonna do the best death in a horror movie ever, but I gave it my all, and the people that I was collaborating with did. So again, to hear that it's so effective is really cool, you know, really cool, and it stands the test of time. The film stands the test of time. Is very. It's cool.
But for the other actors, for those of you that were watching your death scene, there's a powerlessness to it because you can't get out to help. You're high up, it's going to happen, and it does happen. And the reaction, you're talking about an ensemble creating a fraternity.
Well, and also what a brilliant piece of writing was the fact that the only person that was seeing in real time what was going on was my character, a character who couldn't speak. It took me running down the hall and making as much noise as I possibly could, and I still couldn't get the real world to pay attention to what was happening. And I think that's something also everybody can relate to in a dream. A lot of little sneaky, brilliant writing like that feeling of being in a dream and something horrible is happening and you're doing everything you can to try and change the situation, and no matter what, you just can't. And that was the funnest scene for me to shoot.
And that's what I meant, like, that's, you don't realize those choices that were made that makes it, the fear psychological.
Yeah.
Because they want you to be able to speak.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
The audience while they're watching.
Yeah, there's a
so it
reason.
adds a whole other level of fear.
There's a reason that I didn't speak until, the final 5 minutes of the film,
Jennifer, can I ask you, you referenced your death scene, and there's a very nasty, dark undercurrent to that because it's an overdose. And then you've got the nightmarish, surreal quality of the talking wounds and the reaction from Freddy where he pushes the needles in and then he has that rush. You don't necessarily see that these days in horror movies because you've got that balance between Nightmare on Elm Street, nightmarish horror, and real life. And I wondered whether you could talk about that for us.
Well, I really like the syringes. I like that I don't get cut with knives. I think when I was talking before about having the rush go up my head, we had condoms taped to my head, and you would see the vein grow, and then which didn't happen, and I'm glad it didn't because most of the fan mail that I get is from children who may have experimented with drugs and they were so turned off by the needles that they're sober from it. That's one of the great things. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking because the vulnerability of drug addiction and the fact that it was needles and all that kind of stuff was because I do believe that people think I was the one to beat them, but addiction got my character. So, I'm just glad to be pro-sobriety, for the kids, so.
It's a powerful message and it works. Now, we've got Ben down here who's got a microphone, so for those of you in the audience that want to ask a question for our guests, just put your hand in the air and we'll try and come to you as soon as we can. And let's go to that young man right there.
What was it like working with Robert Englund and Eva?
What?
I was a young kid when I made the movie, so when we were doing the choreographed fight scene, it became a little real for me, and I stabbed him for real. And I guess that's unprofessional, but what are you gonna do? But he was fun. He was just, you've probably met Robert, or you will meet Robert, and he's just the most fascinating person in the world. So he really helps younger actors, and he was just so supportive, you know, because I was so young. I just remember him as just being, he's one of my heroes, to tell you the truth, so, you know.
Thank you for that question. Can I ask Ken, but can I ask all of you about whether there was any sense of a boot camp, you know, building an ensemble, you're all working together in the movie. How did you get on in real life, and how early in the process did you all come together prior to making the movie?
Well, we had an audition.
My turn.
No, there was an audition that Ned Benson.
People.
Okay, those guys. But anyway, they had us audition together to see how we worked as a group. That was our first introduction, and now they can go on and tell their stories about that.
So, do you guys want to feed into that?
Yeah, I think that we formed a real sort of dysfunctional family on day one. It was all of our real sort of first big acting job. We didn't know enough to ask for real dressing rooms or real lunch breaks. You know, they built our dressing rooms out of like plywood and sheets.
So you were exploited, weren't you? That's what you were saying. You're exploited.
What's that?
You were exploited.
Yeah, well, I was 19 years old. I was begging to be exploited. Are you kidding me? And we would be sort of trading dressing rooms, you know, hanging out in each other's dressing rooms.
Writing all over the walls.
Yeah, writing all over the walls, and some of the most fun was after we would wrap, and I have a whole collection of Polaroids of us messing around with makeup, and you know, like I have a great picture of me, like, you know, drinking the blood out of like Kristen's wrist. You know, it was a real blast, and Freddie was. It's funny, he says, "You're all my children now," because he really was like a father to us. He really, you know, if there was any question, it was Robert's show, and he sort of set the tone, and the tone that he set for us was really lovely, and he really took care of us, and that was, I didn't know what a gift that was in my first job, but it was really an exceptional experience. And I think that's reflected in the fact that all of us are still friendly with each other, you know? And when we get together at these conventions, it's like old homeschool week, you know? It's
and
really
it all
lovely.
came from that movie.
Yeah, all from that movie, yeah. Ira and I just had a conversation upstairs over lunch that ended with both of us sobbing and hugging each other. And, you know, that doesn't happen with sort of regular folks in life. So the relationships that you see in that movie and the relationships still today, they run deep and they're real. And I value it. It's a rare thing.
What I think is that the director, which was Chuck Russell, before we started filming, he had some of us to come together at a couple of parties. So when we actually was on the set, we all knew each other. We had invested in each other as a friend. And one of the first scenes that we shot was the hospital scene where I went crazy and called the lady and, you know, sucking my dick. You know what I said. And, but we all had an interest in each other. We wasn't just actors then. We had a little friendship among each other. So I think that had a lot to do with it. It's the preparations that the director made for us to be together before we got on the set.
Yeah, no, I would like to speak that, yeah, a lot of that had to do with Chuck, the director, creating an environment, and again, it's collaboration. And if you have a collaborative group of people, you can't go wrong. And everybody seemed pretty collaborative, you know. And yeah, I just echo what they're saying, that the relationships, you know, through the years, you can pick up where you left off, and we're fortunate that we get to get together and do these events like these and pick up where we left off. It's really cool. Yeah.
And you can genuinely see that fraternity
Yeah.
amongst you all. You've mentioned Chuck Russell. He had big shoes to fill because he had to, if we disregard the second movie, he had big shoes to fill because Wes Craven did the first. And Wes Craven was associated with this one, and you can see it, but there's also the writing. And I think it's a very, very, very strong script. So there's a certain Mr. Frank Darabont who had something to do with that. So again, can I ask all of you for your thoughts on the strength of the screenplay? Because it is a strong screenplay, and it's all up there on the screen. So for any of you.
Yeah, I would just repeat about the psychological aspect to it, that it's sorry. I would repeat that it's a very thick script. It's complex, and it deals with a lot of psychological elements, and it resonates. It comes through. So it's a lot deeper than I don't want to compare it to other films, but it's a deep film, you know, in a lot of ways, for being a, you know, horror, you know, film.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible script. I think that, you know, films are all about storytelling. And there's a reason that this film is more popular and more famous than it was when we made the film. It's generational. I'll have grandparents come up with their kids and their kids, you know, 10-year-old kids and, you know, 80-year-old great-grandparents are all into this script, you know. And for years I was embarrassed that Nightmare on Elm Street was the most recognizable title on my resume, because back in the 80s, horror was like the redheaded stepchild of the film industry. It was like one notch below porn. And you know, I've got like, just to offer, you know, and I've got like 100 credits on my IMDb, but still, you know, to this day, Nightmare on Elm Street is still the most recognizable thing. And when I started doing conventions, you know, over a decade ago, and started seeing how much love this film got, you know, I used to say that being embarrassed that the most famous thing you've been in is Nightmare on Elm Street is like being embarrassed that the best thing you were in was The Godfather. And not that I'm comparing the films, right? Come on. Like, that's something that I started saying about 10 years ago at conventions, and I would apologize for it. I'd say, oh, I'm not comparing the films. You know, The Godfather is, you know, a great, great film. But I'll tell you what, Nightmare on Elm Street is a global phenomenon. If you go to the deserts of Dubai, you go to the Arctic Circle, to South America, you ask who Don Corleone is, a few people might know. But if you ask anyone on this planet, who is Freddy Krueger? Oh, Freddy Krueger! Everybody knows Freddy Krueger. And I am far from embarrassed that Nightmare on Elm Street is the most popular thing I've ever been in. I am so honored to be part of such an iconic piece of film, and so honored to be sitting in front of you guys, and thank you so much for your support. If it wasn't for you, we would not be sitting here, so thank you.
And strangely enough, Mr. Krueger is with us today. If you'd stand up, Mr. Krueger, there he is.
Yeah, Paris.
Okay, so just...
Thanks for coming, Dad.
So just to make you all aware that we do have a roving mic for any questions, so don't be shy for questions. There's a line in the film which I'd like to ask you all about, which is this backstory to the villain, the backstory to Freddy Krueger, when he's referred to as the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs. And it comes back to this idea that this film is really very grim indeed. The backstory is quite hellish.
Yeah.
How aware were you all of all of that backstory when you took the job? Was it always in the script? So when you got the script and you read it, you were aware of all of that?
Definitely aware of that. So one of the things I played in high school was Dungeons and Dragons. So the Wizard Master, right? So when my manager, Marilyn Sherman, said, we have an audition for this part, he's a wizard and he plays Dungeons and Dragons, I'm like, I'm on that. That's me. So one of the greatest things about this role is you got to see who I was. So to get to dive into that character and to be that wizard, to be that role play, you know, Taryn, your horse is sinking in the bog. Seriously, what do you do?
I go to bed and I buy a new horse in the morning.
And how do I score that? Enchanted slumber or death? So that was one of the greatest things is I think you see a piece of all of us in their parts. I thought for sure I was going to kill Freddy, though. I really thought I had the power to kill him.
I apologize because it sounds like a fan.
Yeah, it's all right. The guys at the end here can't hear very well, so, okay.
Sorry.
Let me apologize if I seem like I'm crazy. I really can't hear anything that's going on very well. So I'm hoping you can hear me. But as for your question, I had not heard of A Nightmare on Elm Street when I auditioned for this role. So I got it truly because I didn't want to be there, and that was the type of character they wanted. So I wasn't aware of Nightmare on Elm Street. So I didn't know about the backstory because I didn't know about the front story.
Jennifer, did you know about Nightmare?
I knew Johnny Depp was in it. I wish Penelope was here and Heather was here today. Heather's daughter's having a baby this weekend, and Penelope had to take care of some animals. But I think there's something really with the casting that Annette Benson did, where my father was a pharmacist, and so I grew up around drugs, and it was just natural for me to respond to that medical situation. And I know that Penelope, her father was a huge soap opera star, and her head goes into the television set. You played Dungeons and Dragons, and it was just the greatest casting director of all time who could just make our job as easy as possible.
And I was quiet and shy, and all I cared about was getting laid.
And now we just can't keep him quiet anymore.
True.
It's all right, so we go to the audience. Good question down here.
Hi. My name is John McClure, and I got a variety of 2 questions for... Oh, hang on a sec.
What?
Take your teeth out, please.
Do you have this issue?
Okay, so the first question is, what was your reaction when you heard you were going to be in the movie? And the second question is, sorry, I can't forget what it was. Oh yeah. Did you watch any horror films before you were in the movie? Like, did you watch any horror films when you were a kid?
Can you repeat the
Jodie
question?
Foster did House on the... Was it House on the Left or something
That's
like
House
that?
on the
But
Left.
Jodie Foster was my idol, and she did.
I guess they heard it.
I don't think
And
Jodie
wait,
Foster-
the question was how we reacted when we got the job? I was fucking psyched.
Yeah, I was so excited.
It was my first movie.
Yeah.
I could not believe it. I had to call all my friends in high school and say, I'm in a movie. It was awesome. Was I a horror fan before? Hell no.
Yeah,
Scares the hell out of me. Which is probably why my son hates horror too.
and unlike Ira and Ken, I was a huge Nightmare on Elm Street fan. I had seen Nightmare on Elm Street 1 in the theater. I saw Nightmare on Elm Street 2 in the theater. I saw Friday the 13th in the theater when it first came out, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm old. So for my first real acting job in a film, to be in A Nightmare on Elm Street, I could not have been happier. And And as far as being aware of the backstory, and I read the script and I read the whole story, but I was as excited as I was to be in the movie. I was also terrified of not doing a good job. So all I could really focus on was my small part in this, and just doing the best job I could possibly do, and trying really hard not to get in anyone's way, except for Patricia Arquette's, but that's another story.
Okay. I don't have my glasses, so I couldn't see and read lips. So I don't know what the question was asked.
The question was getting the job, your reaction to getting the job. Your reaction to getting the job.
Oh, my reaction for getting the job? I come from a very religious family, and they didn't want me to take the job because of the cussing. So to make a long story short, it was this elderly lady at church who I talked to, and she asked me, does the job pay? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, fuck 'em.
I can't follow that. Actually, the truth is, I had done Stand By Me. I played Eyeball Chambers in Stand By Me. And when we were making that movie, again, same type of thing. We went all in, we did our best. We had no idea that it was gonna be what it became and what it is. And again, like this, I feel like it gets better and better with time. But after that film, I couldn't get a job. Everybody else was jamming. And I remember I went up on, everybody kind of in that crew was, and this pool of young actors at that time, the next big one was like, everybody was trying to get in Lost Boys. And I got up on Lost Boys, and I had a shot at it, but I didn't end up getting it. And then I couldn't, it was just a season of like, it's an up and down career. And then I got a call to go meet with Chuck Russell for this film, and I didn't really watch a lot of horror films. I didn't know Nightmare on Elm Street, but again, the script was cool, and I liked him, and I liked the character, and it just happened. So I was thrilled as a young actor to get a job. It was cool. I was starting to get work as an actor, and it was really, really cool. And then when we got to the places that we were filming, like Rodney was talking about, it was just like a dysfunctional family, and it usually is. It was like a cool, when an artistic group of people get together creatively and it starts to work, there's nothing like it, So,
Yeah, we have so many
that's
great
my
stories.
story.
We have so many great stories. Next question.
Hello, everyone. Big fan of the movie. Big fan of you lot, all this. Jennifer had a crush on you when I was a teenage lad. That being said, my question's for Ira, if I may. I read a while back about you being close friends with Brandon Lee, and that, God bless him, R.I.P., a legend, horror, The Crow was amazing. And I did read that you were looking at producing a film about him, and I just wondered whether that was still on and where it might be up to.
We get to walk lives and friendships for sometimes a long time, sometimes a short time. I'm blessed that I've known everybody here for 35 years. I got to walk with Brandon for 4 years, and it was a special relationship. The most incredible guy, infectious laugh, soulful person, and yes, next year is 30 years, unfortunately, that he's passed, and we have a documentary that we are producing about him and the good times, and it's all his friends, some family, managers, agents, and stuff. So right now we have like 60 hours that we're cutting down, and that'll be out next year. And yeah, so it's very cool. Thank you for asking about that.
Wrap it up. I think you said wrap it up.
Hi there.
thank you for making such a legendary film. I'd just like to ask, what was it like working with a young Lawrence Fishburne?
What?
Repeat that question, please.
What was it like to work with a young Lawrence Fishburne?
Oh my God.
Lawrence was awesome.
Bow down. I couldn't believe it. I was such a huge fan of Apocalypse Now, and when I walked in, I had no idea who was going to be playing that part. And the first day on set, I just saw Cool Breeze walking down the hall, and I couldn't even speak to him. You know, I was I've always been a huge film fan, and to the fact that he's even in the movie is such an anomaly, man. It's such a fucking great movie for so many reasons. And yeah, to work with him and to be in his presence was an honor. Craig Wasson too, man. Body Double. We got to work with people that were the real deal, you know, and that just spoke to the caliber of the Nightmare on Elm Street films we're already building at that time. To be able to get those kind of real actors on board was unbelievable. And such a great gift for a bunch of young actors.
Yep. And there we have to leave it. When he talks about real actors, we've got 5 real actors on stage here. So would you show your appreciation to all of our guests, the Dream Warriors.